for coming tonight. And sorry we're a few minutes late, but the board had a workshop on special education before this. So this is atypical for me to welcome you, but we'll do Pledge of Allegiance in just a second. But the reason that I'm opening up, I always open up the January meeting, is because this is the annual meeting where we select a chair. And once we do that, then I will turn it over to the chair, and then we'll conduct business as usual. So would you all please rise for Pledge of Allegiance? Flags on the back. Or behind us. Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we ask for nominations for chair, I would like to introduce Jennifer Rich Smith as our new school board member. Welcome.
Thank you.
So 4.0, the way that we typically do this is just ask, open up the floor for nominations for board chair.
I'd like to nominate Tim Perkins for board chair.
I'll second it.
Any other nominations for chair?
Move the nominations be closed.
So we have Tim. Will.
Yeah, I'll do it. Sure, why not?
All those in favor? Thank you. He's now I'll turn it over to Tim.
Okay, we'll take nominations for vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Nominate Steve August.
It's a nomination for Steve August by Bill, seconded by Dave.
Nomination cease.
Ellen has moved that nomination cease. There's a nomination for Steve August for vice chair. All those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. Thank you, Steve. You ready for this? Okay. We'll move on to item 6.0. I don't have anything prepared. I was going to introduce Jennifer. Patrick's done that. If you get an opportunity, just say hello when the meeting's over. Introduce yourselves if you could. There were a couple of things. Maybe this will come under adjustments to the agenda, but I would like to at least address the state of the district meeting, which I think is next month, if I'm correct. But maybe we can just add that to adjustments to the agenda. The only other thing I guess I'd want to comment on, two things. Boardwalks, want to thank those administrators who had some of us in their schools last Thursday. There are 4 more schools, I think, that will be walking through this Thursday. If you're able to attend, if you can make it, it's really worthwhile. Kind of opens your eyes, and we don't get a lot of opportunities in our busy lives to get into the schools. But if you can make it, that would be great, and just email those administrators. And wanted to thank all of the administrators for their monthly report. I noticed there's a common theme of a lot of community work going on in the schools, a lot of good professional development, and some great grants that have been written. So it's something that we should think about continuing in the future. So with that said, we will move on to item 7.0 to approve and amend the minutes of December 16th. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes by Steve, second by Bill. If you could just take a minute and go through those minutes. Let me know if there are any changes, additions, omissions. have anything? No? Okay, there's a motion to approve the minutes as written. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? Pass. Okay, we will move on to item 8.0, adjustments to the agenda. Patrick, did you have any adjustments?
Yeah, just a brief executive session that we need to add at the end to discuss a personnel matter.
Where do you want to, the very end?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Let's call it 27.5. Do that before we set the next meeting date. Executive session. And that was to discuss personnel matter.
There's no board action.
Yeah, there should be board action as we come out of the executive session.
I wanted to add just a discussion about the state of the district meeting. I don't know when that would be appropriate. For the executive session? Okay. We'll call that 27.2. Anyone else? Any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to item 9.0, public session. We do have two public sessions. One is the initial one. I would ask that you, if you would like to speak, that you try and keep your comments to around 2 minutes and you address issues that are on the agenda. If there's anything that you would like to speak to that's not on the agenda, I would ask that you keep your comments for the second public comment section, and for that one, take all the time that you want. So, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on the first public comment section? Okay. We will move on then to item 10.0, staff report. No staff reports today. Okay. Item 11.0, committee reports. We'll begin with Bill. 11.1, facilities committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're off and running again. We met during the month of January. Probably the most important item that has come forth from the January meeting was the establishment of the committee, the subcommittee that we had talked about previously, where community people would become involved in studying and taking a long, hard look at our elementary schools. We more or less have turned the high school issue over to the superintendent in terms of putting together a group of distinguished local people and Morse grads and so forth, and start taking a look at the future of the redevelopment of Morse, whether it's reconstruction or a new building. But in terms of the elementary schools, we start with a group of people that are being recruited. And if you have checked the website in recent days, there is a request on the website to individuals in our district to contact Feeder at the office and let her know of their interest, and we'll start moving forward with the composition of a committee to take a look at the elementary schools and the future of the elementary schools in RSU1. We've bought ourselves a 5-year window with the repairs that are going forth at the present time as a result of the bond. And during that 5-year period, and certainly probably during the first couple of years of that 5-year period, this committee needs to take a long, hard, comprehensive look at the future of our elementary schools, what our needs are going to be and move forward with potentially making a recommendation here to the board.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill? I just have a couple. So with this subcommittee, has the facilities committee talked at all about how large they want this to be, or?
It's pretty open-ended at the present time. We want to see how much interest there is. Quite obviously, if there's only a few people, we probably would welcome everyone. And if there's a large number of people, we would have to take a look at geographic representation and that sort of thing to make sure that our whole district was being represented appropriately.
And has the facilities committee talked at all about when they would anticipate the subcommittee reporting back, or making a report back to the board?
No, we're in our infancy.
Okay. So you're thinking we're 6 months away, a year away?
I think the thought process was to have that, if you're speaking to elementary, was to, if we had every community represented, was to start to develop a process that everybody would use and be comfortable with, so that we could go to the school buildings in each community and we would have this discussion about, what could be the options, that could be out there from five years from now, and get public dialogue, public input before we would do anything. I think we talked about a time frame by the spring of this year that all of those meetings would occur, so that we could bring back that input that we're getting from parents and community members about the future of our elementary schools as a first step in the process.
A roadshow,
Yeah.
So realistically, we're really looking at least a year
at least a year,
for that committee to meet.
Yeah.
Okay.
to make any specific recommendations.
Just to begin the work.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to get a handle on, what kind of a commitment it's going to be for the folks that are on there.
Patrick, does the committee have a copy of this particular?
The board does not. It's posted. It's posted.
It's posted on the website.
It's posted on our website to give people an idea of, like, for example, if you're looking to sign up or express an interest in the elementary piece, it's just a draft of maybe over the next year, the type of detail and kind of information that you'll be discussing.
Right.
So, and one from Morse as well, which is
It is on the website, and it's a good starting point for discussion.
Patrick, did you want to talk at all about that more subcommittee? Where we're at with that?
Again, we're giving people until this Friday, I think is the 31st, we just thought it was fair to give people an opportunity to express an interest. And then if they don't, we have a list that we talked about before, that of people that have been recommended that we may reach out to, that would be good, to be on this committee. But again, it's still that balancing act of not wanting it too big, but we'd like to have appropriate representation on that. And again, the timeframe of that one is somewhat driven by some of the information we get from the state as well.
Right.
The deadline for the elementary group is also on the 31st. So encourage people to contact me or at the office if they have interest in serving.
And as we, it's been one of our ongoing goals, and it's going to come up again later on in this meeting, but the more we can do to communicate to the public about the formation of these committees and draw interested parties in, I think the better off we're going to be. And I don't know how to get that message out there so that people know, but any vehicles that we have, I think we need to explore. So, any other questions from anyone for Bill? All right, thanks, Bill. When's your next meeting, do you know?
The 11th of February, I believe.
Yep. Okay.
Before Bill gets off the hook.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I think it is the correct, the appropriate way to go for sure. I mean, this is, and I'm sure from your comments that this discussion will be a very public discussion involving the community to the greatest extent possible, and I think we can reaffirm that no conversations on either Morse or any of the elementary schools have happened up to this point. I mean, there have been no committee discussions.
That's
Correct.
true. That's true.
Because you always hear on the street that the board has already made its mind up on a particular building or to move in a particular direction on Morse. And I think, and I appreciate you reaffirming that. And I think every meeting we should affirm it again, that whatever discussions, whatever movement and action that the public's going to see on this process is going to happen in a very public format, in a very public forum.
Yeah, thanks. No, that's important. Okay, we'll move on to item 11.2, Finance Committee report, and I'll turn that over to Steve.
After a snow delay, the Finance Committee met mid-month, and our primary agenda item was to receive the report from the auditor. And I don't know, Patrick, is that going to be formally presented to the board?
It isn't typically, but no, we put it on our website and we provide copies.
Well-
Hank, I think, has to make, I mean, he's going to send us some more copies so that we can hand them out. Usually I hand them out at the board meeting, and I wanted to tonight, but we don't have the copies.
Okay,
yet.
well, I mean, you know, everyone's certainly welcome to look at my copy if you want to go through it, but I'll just say quickly, you know, Hank Farrar, the accountant, gave us a very clean report. The one deficiency noted was in internal controls, but that's been an ongoing issue and one from conversation with both the auditor and with Patrick and Ruth and Deborah afterwards. I feel very confident is manageable at the district level. So I think the result of the audit is a very positive one, a very good one. And I'll also mention, although Ruth's not here tonight, Hank, who's worked with Ruth for several years now, completing these audits, was very complimentary of her and the way the district has prepared itself to go through the audit process. Patrick also had what I believe is now a finalized budget outline, which I think board members have and is on the website. So just put it on your calendar, starting the first Monday in March 3rd, we'll go through those marathon meetings in 2 successive Monday mornings, dealing with budget recommendations from the various department heads. Other than that, I think that concludes the report. We'll be meeting again in February. See you all in March.
Any questions for Steve about what's going on with the Finance Committee? Okay. One thing I wanted to add with regard to the budget timeline, one thing we may want to consider, and this sort of stemmed from a conversation I had the other day with Jennifer, is that I'm not suggesting that we add an additional budget meeting, but that perhaps one of these initial readings of the budget, it might be appropriate for us to specifically send out an invitation to city councilors and selectmen and tailor, I don't want to say tailor one of the meetings, but have one of the meetings devoted to them so that if they have questions about the budget, they can ask questions that might pertain to their community or their budget. And it's a good way for us to, if those folks show up, it's a good way to disseminate the information back into the community. So as we, again, get this information out to the public, I would suggest that one of these meetings, we make a point of specifically inviting all of the select people and all of the city councilors to attend that meeting. So, okay. We'll move on to item 12.0, Superintendent's report, and I'll turn this over to Patrick.
First, just to give you an update on the bond, that we've completed all the necessary documentation and sent that to our financial advisor, so he has everything he needs We went out to bid on this project for architectural/engineering firm, and we have 2 interviews set up with 2 companies on Wednesday of this week. And so they'll come in and make a presentation. We have their packets for what we call requests for qualifications, and we look through those, and we're impressed with both firms that we're going to talk to on Wednesday. So after we do that, we'll select one. And right now, it's myself, Dave Richards, and Bill Perkins that is coming in from the board, and we'll have those meetings on Wednesday. Our immediate goal is for them to take our list of projects for the bond, spec them out, design, and come up with a ballpark figure, even though we know what the bond is up to, 5.2 million. But once we have that done, the sooner the better that we can get that to our financial advisor so that we can get the ball rolling with getting the money. 8th graders, just wanted to mention that Bath Middle School worked with Channel 8. I don't know if you saw it on TV maybe. If you don't, you can go on their website and you can see. But they made 3 public service announcements, and were regarding cyberbullying, peer harassment, and role played, and did a good job with that. And these students, just quickly, the students were Emma Gould, Sierra Wallace, Abby Minot, Jack Harrington, and Brandon Shanklin. And again, the PSAs aired last week, and Matt and Bud have received quite a few phone calls from across the state with school systems that have seen it and asked, how they got part of this project, and just, kind of learning some of the things that we're doing at Bath Middle School to help with some of those issues. As well as the Purple House at BMS, before break, also did PSAs on how to reduce main energy consumption. And again, I don't know if you saw that, but it was featured in the Times Record as well as the Coastal Journal. At all of our elementary schools recently, and in BMS as well, geography Bs happened, and I can't get past probably the second question in most of those competitions, and it amazes me how the students can. And so the students of each winner has the option to take a qualifying test, and I think it's the top 100 scores that take that test in Maine that go on and compete for the state GOP. All of our principals attended an attendance workshop, which may sound kind of simple to you, but it was something that the state has really put an emphasis on. And as much as action steps that we can do to try to improve student achievement and work with students, this system as well as other systems in Maine, there is an issue with a certain population that are just missing too much school. And that attendance piece, and especially that fine line between the holding students and families accountable, consequences and punishment, whatever way you want to look at it, versus making home visits and trying to be supportive. And it's always difficult finding that fine line, but when students miss a fair amount, or not a fair amount, but enough school out of 175 days, it's very difficult for us to work with them. And so we brought back some action steps, and it's a continued focus for us, as a system. And then just last thing I'll mention is, Tim mentioned boardwalks, but for those of you that are here, and those of you that may tune into this, is it just an opportunity for board members to get into our schools? You help manage, create, and oversee, and help approve a school budget, and also policies, facilities, and you're involved in a lot of things. I know there's always a fine line, and sometimes it makes people possibly uncomfortable to have a board member in school, but that's why we organize these, is for board members to come in, see it on the ground floor, so when we do ask for things during the budget process, or maybe it has you ask us questions of, you saw this in one of the schools. And so I think it's a very educational piece for board members, and I thank the staff and the administrators who are helping make this happen. That's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Patrick? Any of the items? I have a couple. You talked about these companies coming in for Wednesday. When, time-wise, would you be determining which of the 2 to go with?
Yeah, my hope is by, time is at the essence here, so my hope would be maybe by Friday. We've already called, and they provide references, so, they're both reputable companies. We've talked to them about, we've talked about the systems and check references, and so I think we feel confident and comfortable with both. Again, I've asked Bill to be there as the chair of the facilities committee, and also extend the invitation to Steve as the finance chair, to come in and listen to those presentations. Anybody else that would like to, I I think it's 1 o'clock is one company, and then at 2 o'clock is the other company coming in back to back to make presentations. So you're all welcome to, but I just thought the most pertinent people to be there, with everybody's schedule is 2 of them.
Do you want to talk any more about, what their involvement will be, how long they'll be with us, what their responsibilities will be, what the liability is?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have one of these companies who are big, financially stable, have plenty of insurance piece. I mean, those are the things that we're looking for in their qualifications as well as references. They will be with us probably, this is a guess, but through the summer, so the end of August, maybe a little bit further if we have a few projects that are, once school starts, if they still need to be completed. I see this company, and this could fluctuate, but I see this, the firm providing an overseer of the project, whatever term you want to use, clerk of the works, working also with the engineer that's going to spec this out and work with us, and then work closely with Dave Richards, who, again, I'm imagining at this point would be more of the owner's rep type of thing, that we would not employ an owner's rep separate, because Dave is here on a day-to-day basis and very involved, but they would have a clerk of the works that they would provide, obviously for a cost that we would use.
Any questions, Patrick, on that? Okay, then we will move on to item 12.2, financial report.
Yeah, I didn't ask Ruthie to come tonight just because when we looked at the finance report last week, and you have it in your packet, it's really not that, it's actually, I think maybe $10,000 higher, the projection at the end of the year, but we're still looking at, a little bit above 400,000 that we would have left, at the end of the year, 431 to be exact. And you have the front sheet, which is your normal one that we receive, and then the back one. The bottom line is the same, it's just broken out a little bit differently. So there's really no glaring concerns that we have at this point. There's 2 lines that are, we're predicting that might be overdrawn by just a small amount. And one of those is special education tuition, again, which is always a moving target. And the other one is system administration, and that's primarily due to a projected retirement.
Any questions for Patrick on the financial report? All right. Then we will move on to item 12.3, fundraising requests.
Again, this is an informational item for you that we try to give you these up front in the summertime, usually in August or September. And we ask our principals to talk with their staff. And, we have typical fundraisers that happen in the system. And then these ones, when we can't be perfect, sometimes a group may need more money. We're trying to be sensitive to asking too much. But just to give you, again, a flavor for the other fundraisers that were not on your original list that will happen from now until the end of the school year.
Are there any questions or comments from Patrick on these fundraisers? Okay, then we will move on to old business, item 13.1. Review of board goals. Any comments, any questions on where we stand with board goals for this year? Again, I made a note under our second goal. One of the ways that I think we can improve public relations within the district would be to modify one of those budget presentations to the select board and make a concerted effort to specifically have one meeting where we invite them all to attend. We seem to be making good headway on the bond. I'm hearing a of our programs in pre-K towards the end of the year. So those are all scheduled. Any questions, or anybody want to add anything on the goals? All right, we'll move on to item 13.2, second reading of policy ACAB, harassment and sexual harassment of school employees. This is a second reading, it's an action item. Is there a motion? Move to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Discussion? All right, there's a motion to approve as written. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to item 13.3, sabbatical leave request. This is an item from last month's agenda that we tabled. This is an action item. We have two sabbatical requests, again, from last month. I think we should take each of these individually. These are action items. So on the first one, for Dan Madden,
Second that.
Steve, motion to approve. Seconded by Bill. Any further discussion?
I still think that with the proviso that I made last time, the suitable sum be found, should be part of the motion.
Patrick, do you want to address
Yeah,
that?
I think, I think it makes sense. I think I talked with Jay Pinkerton, I talked with, he's talked with the department. I think that department, with the number of people we have in that department, as well as the content area, that he feels comfortable and confident that he'll be able to find, a high-quality person to do that.
I think, again, I think that Alan brings up a good point, that we need to make sure that we get good people in there, but we've got the assurances from the administration that that was brought up and that they've addressed that.
We certainly get that. I mean, that's why my communication to you about the other request is maybe a little bit different. And again, we have that concern on one hand. At the same time, we have if this does get approved, we have an individual that needs to plan and needs to, know that he or she is able to go on the trip, and then, we can't wait until the fall of that year and wait until we get a good sub and then say, no, that's hard. It's impossible, really, unfortunately.
Any further discussion? Questions? Okay, there's a motion to approve sabbatical leave for Dan Madden. All those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Unopposed? That passes. Okay, with the second request, this is the item that we need to discuss in executive session. So let's hold off on that until we come out of executive session, and then we'll make a decision on that one at that time. Okay, on to new business. A couple of personnel items. Item 14.1, we have some retirements and some Schedule B appointments. So again, I'll turn this over to Patrick.
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank the two retirements that we have for you tonight. One is Deb Petit, grade 6 teacher at BMS, and she's been in the system for 25 years. And then we have Tom Soul, principal at Woolwich, for, I think this is his 16th year he's been at Woolwich, which is impressive as a building principal, and to leave with a brand new school and leave and I sent him a note to this fact that, he's hired many of the staff at Woolwich, and it's a very strong staff, and, so he can, I think, walk out of there feeling, it was a tough decision for him to walk out of there feeling like I've left a physical building in obviously great shape, as well as a teaching staff for students. So I'd like to thank Tom and Deb for all of the years of service to the system.
We just keep him on to get that wood chip boiler thing sorted out.
Dave Bridges has got that.
You sure? I don't know. I did the walk. The boardwalk with him the other day.
Maybe we know something like that. And then just Schedule B appointments is just an FYI. Again, same thing. We're just trying to, we provide you with, I don't know, probably 90% of them in the fall. They're annual appointments, and then these are the ones that we didn't have for you that we filled. We usually try to bring to you halfway through the year.
Any questions on the Schedule B appointments on the board? All right, we will move on to review board committee assignments. It's interesting, and Rita can probably attest to this. For some reason in my mind, I thought we had a lot more committees or subcommittees than we do here on this list. Now, maybe some of these have become inactive or been latent.
We streamlined this on purpose.
That's good.
Well, really what we did, to be honest with you, is went back and looked at our policies. And there is an affirmative action advisory committee. And we have an affirmative action person in the system that receives a stipend, does a great job for us. And again, we put as needed over to the right, but it's not a bad idea that at least once a year or maybe twice a year that a board member be part of that. Same with dropout prevention and BRCTC advisory. So they're either in policy or they're in the bylaws. But there were some other ones that we had listed that when we look at policies and we look at different things, there was really no strong rationale for having that, and all of you give up your time. And the top three are board policies, board committees, and then the bottom ones are more, I won't say extras, but other committees.
Okay.
So, for example, we had patent-free library on there. Well, that's something that we have a connection with, and we have actually two members on that. But we do. Okay.
But you're.
I'm an old
in
boy,
your own.
yeah.
Okay. But again, that was not anywhere in our policies. It's a good community relation piece, but it's not something that we felt like needed to be on here. So anyway, we're just trying to streamline it.
Okay, so that said, a couple of things. Does anyone here have any concerns about the committee that they currently serve on? Nobody's concerned about assignments? All right,
Well, I'll raise one now that Patrick brought it up.
go ahead.
Because if we don't have a representative on the patent-free library board, someone ought to tell the library board, because it's probably in their bylaw.
I don't recall whether it is or not.
Well, they let me
Okay.
vote, so it must be in the bylaws. I'm a voting
Indeed.
member, as a representative of the RSU, I'm a voting member of the patent-free library board. I'm not advocating, that I should go to that meeting. Don't get it wrong. But if we're going to just continue that if this board is going to decide we don't want to send a representative to the patent-free library board, you ought to negotiate that with the patent-free library board so that we're all in sync.
I think we should. I've been working not only with them initially when I was appointed by the board, but since I've become a member of the board from the community, I've worked with children's librarian over there on a couple of items that were integrated with the school, and I think currently talking with them about the first grade children getting library cards and tour of the library. And also, the other day I was discussing pre-K with him, sort of exploring some ideas. I think that that we need to maintain and even strengthen it in some respects. I think it's an educational institution in and of itself.
And again, my rationale was not because we didn't want to. It was more that we didn't have anything that stated, in our system that it would be. I mean, that's a good point, Steve. I was looking through the lens of, for example, we have the ECAC committee, like you just referred to. Mid-Coast Hospital does a lot for us. So I was just kind of looking at it from more of a community organizational standpoint. That, where do we, we have 7 board members, and where do we, I don't know, draw the line, or
Sure.
how do we, if somebody approaches us, how do we make those decisions, and where does it go?
I think, Steve, you bring up a good point. I think we should find out from the library if within their bylaws, if it requires a representative from the school district. And then if it does or it doesn't, at that point, we can ask them, if you do, then we should probably provide someone. If it doesn't require it, would you still like someone? And if that's the case, I could put it out to the board and somebody could, volunteer for that. So we'll get to the bottom of that before the next board meeting. Does that address your concern?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Dave. I mean, I think it's appropriate for us to be a member of the board, but of their board, to have a representative on their board. But if as a school district we feel that that's not an appropriate role or a proper role for us to play, then let's just make sure that we're not sending the wrong message to the library.
Right, and vice versa.
Yeah.
We may think it's an appropriate measure for us to have someone on their board, but it may not be their request that someone from the district be on the board.
We may want to get rid of it.
Right. So let's find out, first of all, what's in their bylaws, and then we'll adjust accordingly.
I'll
And
check
even if
it
it's
out.
not in there, but they want someone.
I have a copy of the bylaws at home. I'll check it out.
Okay.
There are two, just to give you, there are two other qualified members of their board, where there is a Bath representative as the largest city in their service area, and they also have a rotating position, a rotating trustee that circulates among the other communities. So there'll be a representative from Rouseck and then one from, Woolwich. Well, not Phipsburg down.
Not Phipsburg.
Not Phipsburg. West
Not
Bath.
Old Stoke.
and other communities. So, we do have there is a pattern where from the library of trying to draw community representation in. I think we fit nicely in that, but we should check it out.
And they've also drawn 3 members of the board now who were
Yeah, it's like old
who were or are
in the library.
yes, members
Because
of the
Julie
school
Rice
board.
is now vice chair, right? She's now the vice chair of the library.
And for me, again, it was just the formality of putting it on a list like
Sure.
this, and where do you make that cutoff? That's all. With other boards that, people may approach you, and that's all. So we'll look at the bylaws and communicate. And hopefully, it's a good relationship to have, not questioning that at all.
All right, so nobody seems to have issue with current assignments. I might have one, but I wanted to ask Jennifer, would you be interested in also serving on the policy committee?
Yes, I would like that.
Okay, I'm going to put you down for that. You'll need to talk to Dave and Patrick about the timing of those meetings, and and see how it coordinates around your schedule. The other thing I wanted to ask is, Kyle, Jennifer works in Augusta. Would you be willing to giving up the legislative contact?
Sure.
And let her take that, because she's in Augusta on a pretty regular basis. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll put Jennifer in there. Kyle, is there another committee that you would want to serve on? And I'm offering up BRCT advisory if you have any interest in that.
It's fun. Is it something you want to give up?
I think I'm ready to give that one up. It's a good one, though. I've enjoyed it. So I'll put you in there. Okay, and are there any other committees that someone is not serving on that they would like to serve on? I think so. Okay. All right, so essentially, I can get this to Vita, but Jennifer will now be serving on policy in addition to Dave Barber. Kyle will be our new BRCTC advisory member, and Jennifer will be the new legislative contact, and we will follow up on the library.
Is there anybody that, I mean, we're talking about dropout prevention, might be 1 or 2 meetings a year, as well as affirmative action, which might, again, be once a year to meet the requirements of our policy, which I also think would be just a healthy thing to check in on so that our board member is aware of, like, take affirmative action, how many complaints we receive in a year, what's our process, that type of thing. So,
I think that's sort of a dropout. I've done that in the past.
You want to do that as well? So let's put Dave and Kyle on dropout. And then we can have a volunteer for affirmative action.
I'll do it.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. We have a few, out-of-state overnight field trip requests. We'll begin, item 16.0 is a request for Odyssey of the Mind. This is sort of a pre-request, and we see this annually. This isn't the first time this has come to us. It's anticipation of possible overnight. Is there a motion?
So moved to approve.
Move to approve by Dave, seconded by Bill. Okay, any discussion on this? Any questions for Patrick on this? As I said, this is one we see annually, but it's a form of a pre-request.
and it runs Tuesday through Saturday. There's no financial obligation in the system. And right now, just so you know, we have 9 teams for Odyssey of Mind, 4 at Fisher Mitchell, 3 at BMS, and 2 at West Bath. So again, we have to qualify for this competition. So it may not happen, but it will for the teams.
Okay, there's a motion to approve. All those in favor, raise your hand. Unopposed? Passes. Hopefully they'll be sending some folks to that competition. Next item, 17.0, out-of-state overnight field trip request for Ocean Bowl. In your packet, you had a pretty detailed description of what's involved in this. Again, this is something that we've done in the past. Is there a motion? Move to approve?
Second.
By Alan, seconded by Steve. Again, a lot of detail here. Anything you wanted to add, Patrick?
No, I think you can see it's a Saturday, I think it's a Saturday into Sunday, so they're not missing any school time, academic competition, which is kind of nice. And you saw the amount and the students are really just responsible for kind of sharing that hotel cost because they're staying off the campus of UNH.
Any questions, concerns? It's like these folks put an awful lot of time into this. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Okay, and then item 18.0, we have an out-of-state field trip request for the Morse Music Department. This is going to Berkeley, I think. Is there a motion on this? Move to approve by Steve, seconded by Bill. Patrick, was there anything you wanted to add on this one?
No, just boosters pay for half at the bus, and then students have to contribute a little bit as well to take that charter bus.
And this is on a weekend, so they wouldn't be missing any school.
Right.
A lot of students, 30 students. Any other questions? Discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. Passes. Okay, we have a number of first readings and some interesting policies this month. So we'll begin with item 19.0, first reading of policy AD, educational philosophy / mission. Dave, is there anything, especially with these particular policies, either you or Patrick, any background you want to give us on these?
Most of them are just sort of being brought up to date, element of housekeeping here. I think the one that made reference to the superintendent that's under, isn't it?
Yep, that's one of the last ones.
Yeah. That might be important to kind of review in more detail. The process by which the evaluation takes place is what I'm referring to.
Okay. As we go through these, if you want to just shed any light on what was discussed in policy committee, that would be beneficial. So for this particular policy, any questions, concerns?
I noticed that under the objective letter points that science and history, had been added on to point A. But what I didn't notice and I thought would be worth including was something about the arts, music, acting, theater, etc., as something that's important to include in that list.
Okay. Add something to the extent of arts. Did you have language specific or?
I just thought after history, comma, the arts. Okay. Continuous with.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Sure. I have two proposed amendments to this policy. One would be that we look at a consistency of use between the word student and children. It seems if we're talking about the children in terms of being students, that perhaps we could continue just using the word student, because we probably have students that are of all ages and would also think of themselves perhaps not just as children, they might think of themselves as young adults. So if they were reading this or thinking about how this applied to them, I think maybe the word student to be consistent.
So you're suggesting that every place that the word children appears, that we replace it with student?
Yes.
Yeah.
We do have an adult ed program. Probably don't want to be referred to as children. They are, but they're not children.
True.
Hopefully not.
And the second proposal would, and I don't have any language crafted at this time, but I did notice and read that there is a specific reference to professional staff. And I was wondering if there was any place in this policy that if we're talking about our philosophy of education, our mission, that we could talk about our philosophy of educating our professional staff. So somewhere in this policy, we could make a statement towards our intention to continue that in a systemic commitment to professional development for the staff. Maybe David could help me craft where that might fit or how we might address that in our first policy meeting together.
Okay. Do you want to comment on that, Patrick?
And my first thought is, I mean, I can't know every policy in the system. I mean, if you go on our website, everything's on there, but I think the first step would be for the policy committee just to now go back and think of, no, is that we may already have something from, kind of a board mission, and something else may include that professional development piece, but it may not, so it's a good point, I'll look at it. If it's not, we can certainly add it to this.
I guess while we're there, I also wonder what the word legally charged with responsibility means in this context. I mean, they don't really, the staff really doesn't have a legal obligation to educate kids. Right? I mean, they do educate kids.
You're right,
But-
they
but to say you have a
themselves,
legal obligation
right, we
suggests
as a
that
district
if you
have
don't-
a legal
Right.
obligation.
If you don't educate the kids, then you can get sued. I don't know. I'm just not sure where the word comes from.
We
It's
might
got
want
what it
to,
means. It's got what it means, what it means.
might want to just ask them about that. Anything else, Steve?
Well, on the second page, on the last sentence of that first paragraph, the school directs learning opportunities, and these opportunities encourage responsibilities to be taken by students. I think the idea there is that students are have an equal responsibility as part of this educational activity. But I don't, and I understand, I agree with that, but I'm not sure that clearly articulates that view. If that's the position that we're trying to present here, and I do agree with that, I'm not sure this clearly presents it. So it's really a wordsmithing thing.
That's a good point.
And maybe it's as simple as that. You know, the school directs learning opportunities, but students share in the obligation. The student must have an is actively responsible for participating, as part of this educational practice.
I could get lost in this semantics.
Well,
Let me square it away.
It's just something, as I read it, I understood it, but I don't think the words
Made it that clear.
need to wordsmith.
This is a hard policy because it's one of the first that we've looked at in a long time that, one, is so broad, it's more philosophy than policy, and two, it's something that we haven't necessarily generated as a board, we're just reacting to. So it's almost as if you'd think we would be entrusted with the creation of this. Each board might have a different philosophy, but so it makes it tricky.
I do like the additional wording in red that talks about that equal is not identical opportunity. I think that's really nice to be able to say that. We want to have an equal opportunity, but that might not look the same for every school or every child. I think that would be a good addition.
So any other additions or questions, comments? So we've got a couple of recommendations. This will go back to policy and hopefully they can tighten this up for next month. Okay, we'll move on to item 20, first reading of policy AEC, accountability, reporting to the public. Any questions, comments on this policy?
I just have one.
Steve, go ahead.
One comment or question, I guess, as much as anything. In A, district annual report. Is that what we now call the state of the district report?
Yeah, it's very similar to that.
I mean, I like the idea of a state of the district. I like that.
So you can have multiple formats that districts can put it in.
Can we just change district annual report to the state of the district, if that's what it's going to be?
I had the same question. I looked at A, B, and C, and again, this policy goes back to, what's the date on this one? But I'm not sure that those had been, we've been consistent in doing those three things. The comprehensive plan report, the district annual report, and the local assessments.
Yeah, the local assessment system, I mean, the state put that on hold, on pause, what was it, 5 years ago? And so that one really doesn't apply, but it could come back, so the policy committee talked about that, maybe we should be leaving that in there. And then some of these other ones are, just, not as pertinent as I think as letter A, but.
Okay. Any other questions on this one? Okay. We will move on to first reading, item 21, first reading of policy BBA, school board powers and responsibilities. Any questions, comments on this one? Does this language all originate from that handbook, the Maine School Board Association handbook? Okay. Item 22, first reading of policy BBAA, board member authority and responsibilities. Any questions, comments?
This was kind of streamlined because we have, like for example, B, we have that in another policy that we have regarding complaints. So it was just repetitive one.
Again, it was interesting to look at this policy prior to the changes, and it really was not very broad in terms of what we do. I'm surprised that it still existed. Okay.
Why did you shrink it? Is that into another policy?
My guess is it's still in effect, but it has nothing to do with what our authority is.
So it's similar.
Yeah.
Again, it goes to that kind of the boardwalk piece. And I think when I sent out that boardwalk, I think I put something on the first side, just talked about, we welcome you at any time. It's just a matter of, letting us know. And to be honest with you, I don't, I'm not even, A is kind of odd on this one because you're talking about board member authority and responsibilities, and it just says schools are open for visits anytime. It doesn't even talk really about you guys. It just says, we'll identify anybody, to the building administrator.
It doesn't reference a board member at all.
So it just wasn't well done, I don't think, the first time.
Oh, it's been around for a while. Okay, any other questions on that one? We'll move on to item 23, first reading of policy BDE, board standing committees.
Just a grammatical thing, the very last line, the board may establish other standing committees if deems necessary, maybe deemed necessary instead.
Or if it deems.
Yeah, deemed.
Thank you. Any other questions on this one? Comments? Okay. Item 24, first reading of policy BDE-R, standing committee operating procedures. Anybody have any issues, questions on this one? All right. Item 25, first reading of policy EDF, board advisory committees.
This was something that, with the facilities committee, forming two, what do you want to call them, advisory or ad hoc committees.
Right.
We just didn't have a policy, and I think that we'll continue to have ad hoc committees that have a specific purpose and a timeline, and this is really, I think, appropriate guidance for those folks that are willing to give up their time for those committees.
No, I thought this was great, and I almost wish we'd had that level of guidance when we did the school choice transportation committee. If we'd been more specific about, here's your responsibilities, here's your timeline, might have helped everyone.
I would just make one adjustment in the first sentence. It says advisory committees may study particular problems and make reports. I'd just change that to a shall. Shall. Particularly when it comes to making reports.
Okay?
We not require it. That's my recommendation to the general.
Yep.
You got it.
Okay. Anyone else on that one? All right. The final one is item 26, first reading of policy CBI, evaluation of the superintendent. Dave, you had something you wanted to add to this?
Well, to me, this sort of lays it out more explicitly. And I think the process, as outlined in the timeline, is pretty clear.
Yeah, no, this is
And I
great.
think this is what we need.
Yeah, to give the board a little more guidance on
Sure.
how we do this. Patrick, was there anything you wanted to add to this one?
No, actually, I brought this to the policy committee because I just felt like, I think often we get confused that, you have to send something up to the Department of Education in December about the superintendent's contract, and we often, did the superintendent's evaluation around the same time, because I think we felt we had to, but again, I think that it's more beneficial to do it in the spring, especially if you have a new superintendent that comes in, instead of doing it in November, December. It just outlines the process so that, it wasn't outlined anywhere, so that regardless of board members that come and go and superintendents that come and go, that there's an established process that can be used. I mean, the tool itself, I drafted one of those as well, for people to review, but again, that can be, negotiated, changed, but it's just nice to have a process with guidelines and who's involved, so.
Just a consistency point, board capitalized, not capitalized. It seems like it varies a bit, especially between what's in red on that first page and then in parts on the second page.
Okay. Anyone else on this one? Okay. That's it for first readings. We'll move on to 27, item 27, our second public comment section. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Okay. Item 27.2, State of the District discussion. I just wanted to bring this up because I realized that perhaps, as we get close to our February meeting, we're coming up also on the State of the District meeting, and I know that one of the things that we had talked about last year, and it kind of coincides with one of our goals, is to try and get more public participation in that meeting. It's a great meeting for the public to get a real snapshot of what's happening district-wide. It's not just about numbers, but it's also not just about the touchy-feely stuff. It's a little bit of both. And so I'd be open to hearing from the board any suggestions that you might have on how we can better communicate to the public. And maybe, take a small ad out in the paper, or, I don't know. But I want to make sure, particularly with the amount of work that our administrators and our staff put into that meeting, I think it behooves us to try and get as many people there as we can.
So I think from a school's perspective, we can do a better job of sending out the newsletters to parents. We can get the parent audience, so to speak, with newsletters with the school messenger, piece to remind them, it's more than community members that is a little bit more difficult. We can do a better job from a school perspective to get more, all parents there.
I don't know if there are specific, maybe state guidelines that would prohibit RSU1 from doing this, but I think it would be really advantageous to get a better social media presence for the district. Things like Facebook, Twitter, not just with parents, but especially with kids. That's a really good way to reach out to students and to gain their attention, I think.
You're right on. Talk to me about this after the meeting. 'Cause I've got some thoughts on this, and I've been picking Patrick's brain about it.
Okay.
He's been tweeting this whole meeting.
Any other thoughts on how we can get out to the public?
I'd be supportive of running an ad. I think it's a good idea.
If we can't get coverage in the paper, we can at least run an ad to prompt people. And again, reaching out to select people, to the city council, saying, hey, this is tell them what this meeting is about. Jennifer, you had mentioned other groups. We have, in one form or another, we have, Rotary involvement or Elks Club involvement, United Way involvement in the district. If there was a point person there, and I'm stealing from you, but that we could reach out to, just to say, hey, can you sort of disseminate this message, or put it in a letter that just goes out to those key people, might be a good way to get some more public participation. And I find that that meeting in particular is a great sort of launching period for budget talks.
How many of our member communities have community bulletin boards, have an operation of community television station? I know Pittsburgh does, I know Bath does. I don't know beyond those two. But like in Pittsburgh, you send something to Gary Moran, and he'll make a bulletin panel for you and run it together with municipal meetings, announcements, and so forth. And it runs for a week. He generally is pretty artistic about it too, so that it stands out.
No, I think that's a great
And
idea.
Steve Malloy must do, well, I know he does the same thing at Bath Community Television. And I'm not sure of the other communities, Woolwich or West Bath, do they have a community television station?
I think we do have somebody, yeah.
Yeah,
I
they used
can't think of
to
the
have
name right
somebody
now,
at
but-
Town Hall over
Yeah.
there that set up the page.
It is, yeah. I think there's
So we ought to
somebody
find
that
out
does
who that is.
that. And also the YMCA, that's
Oh,
where all
right.
the kids are, and, any of the programs, the after-school programs that are run, in terms of daycares and things like that. I think those are, wherever the kids are, a great source for that. The patent-free library, maybe.
Right?
Ask them before you take them.
We're not taking it off. I just want to make sure.
And they all have email listservs and their own Facebook pages and things like that, so,
Yeah, brackets, Shaw's,
right,
pharmacies maybe.
yeah.
Do it in such a way that's not overwhelming the central office staff, but I mean,
I thought you guys were going to offer help with this.
I'll be glad
No,
to
I've
distribute.
got notes, and we can certainly do a better job within the system and also in the communities.
And I think we could establish a protocol at central office that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. That, okay, here's the list of contacts. this person likes email, these people like email, we send this out, these people like mail, we mail this out, and we have 4 locations where we post something, and that's it. All right. Anybody else want to add something to that? No? Then we will move on to item 27.5, executive session.
I think we could use the library.
I move we
Go into executive session. Okay, there is a motion to enter executive session by Steve. Is there a second? Second by Alan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we are now in executive session. We will move to the library.
Mr. Parker, we're communicating over email. What are you for talking about social media outreach in the district?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you guys wanna go, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome.
Surprising homework.
Yep. Yeah, drop me an email, though. This is something that I'd like to hear your thoughts on.
Okay. I'm starting co-teaching with Bob Jordan on Morse for the debating controversial issues. So I'm wearing a shirt and tie every day now. It's a lot of fun. I do, yeah.
Okay, so we are back in session, back in regular session. We have one last sabbatical to take action on. Is there a motion? Would someone like to make a motion?
give a shot. Make it a shot here. I would move that we approve sabbatical for the second semester of the 2015-16 school year for Marcus Simpson. With those conditions as defined,
As discussed in executive session, is that correct?
So there's a motion by Steve,
One second.
seconded by Kyle. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Okay, we'll move on to item 28. Set next meeting dates and location. Anybody have any issues with the 24th of February at Morse? Assuming that will be in the cafeteria. Okay.
That's the state of the district.
So we may, I'll get the word out, we may move that to
Bigger venue?
or a nicer venue. Someplace to project, and I think we did it at EMS last year, and that was, I thought that was nice. Yeah, or Woolwich maybe, someplace that has a built-in screen and better maybe acoustics than that place. So we'll make sure we get it up soon, we're gonna change it.
Okay. Everybody good with that? 24th? Move on to item 29. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Bill,
second.
seconded by Steve. Any further discussion on that, on adjourning? No? All right, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, raise your hand. None opposed? Are you opposed? We have one opposed. For the minutes, and we'll check the minutes next month. One opposed. We're adjourned.
Thank you.